Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says the Chinese threat against Tory MP Michael Chong was not credible. Tory leader Pierre Poilievre disagrees. As the war continues in Sudan, Canada is sending millions of dollars worth of humanitarian aid to the region. And the federal carbon tax has been hitting many hard, including our school boards. UCP Lethbridge East candidate Nathan Newdorf has the details.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says it is insane that the Canadian Security Intelligence Service knew of a Chinese threat made against one of his MPs, but did not tell the Prime Minister or the Public Safety Minister. Poilievre says the Trudeau government knew about the threat against Michael Chong and his family 2 years ago. Trudeau, however, told reporters earlier today that CSIS did not consider the threat credible and did not pass the information along. Trudeau said he ordered intelligence agencies to inform MPs if there were any threats against them.
I found about like everyone else through the public reporting on Monday, and asked CSIS to ask for more information, and that's what we've been gathering over the past days. If anyone ever were to or ever puts a threat against an MP or a family, we need to know about it, and we're going to make sure that CSIS elevates that, even if it's not a credible threat or doesn't hit the threshold that they would decide is necessary. When it comes to MPs and their families, I think we have to have a lower threshold.
Conservative MP Michael Chong stood in the House of Commons earlier today to express his disappointment with the Trudeau government. Chong says he and his family should have been notified of the threat.
The Prime Minister said this morning that CSIS made a determination that it wasn't something that needed to be raised to a higher level. But former CSIS Director Dick Fadden said the assessment would certainly have been sent to the Departments of Public Safety and Foreign Affairs and the Prime Minister's National Security Advisor, which appears to have been David Morrison, the current Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. Will the government confirm the Prime Minister's assertion this morning that the intelligence assessment never made it out of CSIS?
I can certainly confirm that we are guided by the advice that we get from our intelligence agencies, which is strictly governed under the Security of Information Act, as my colleague across the aisle knows. And it's important that we navigate this very carefully, because when we talk about matters that relate to national security, it's people's lives who are at stake. The people who work for CSIS, the people who work within the law enforcement community, the people that work in this chamber, including the member for Wellington Halton Hills. That's why we briefed him on numerous times. We'll continue to ensure his safety and security so that we can protect the people that work within these institutions.
Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says Prime Minister Justin Trudeau knew for 2 years about the threat against Tory MP Michael Chong and his family, but did nothing to protect him.
For 2 years, since July of 2021, that a foreign agent was in this country threatening the family of a Canadian MP, and that he did absolutely nothing. He didn't kick the foreign agent out, he didn't inform the MP, he did nothing to protect the family. Now he's interested in protecting himself. He doesn't want to answer questions about the Trudeau Family Foundation that got $140,000 from the dictatorship in Beijing, specifically to influence him, a donation facilitated by his very own brother, who's testifying. Trudeau doesn't want to answer questions about the fact that he's trying to ban the hunting rifles of Grandpa Joe, instead of going after the repeat violent killers who are stabbing and shooting up our streets. He doesn't want to answer about how his carbon tax is driving 1 in 5 Canadians to skip meals and 1.5 million to go to food banks.
As the war rages on in Sudan, Canada's International Development Minister Harjit Sajjan announced humanitarian funding for the region. Sajjan says many are stuck in the middle of the conflict without food, water, or medical care. The Canadian government is committing $71 million in aid for Sudan, South Sudan, and the African Republic.
This funding will go to experienced partners working on the ground, including United Nations organizations like the World Food Program, UNHCR, and the UN Refugee Agency, the Red Cross, and NGO partners such as Action Against Hunger, Care Canada, World Vision, just to name a few. Canada will work with our partners to help meet people's needs quickly and with dignity. That means providing food, water, sanitation, and hygiene services.
A soldier from Alberta and another from Ontario were both killed while fighting in Ukraine. Global Affairs says it is aware of reports that 2 Canadians died and is following up with authorities. Family and aid workers identified the 2 Canadians as Kyle Porter of Alberta and Cole Zelenko of Ontario. The 2 were killed during fierce fighting last week around the eastern city of Bakhmut. The carbon tax is having a negative impact on not just business owners and our hospitals, but also on our education system. That's according to UCP Lethbridge East candidate Nathan Neudorf, who says the levy, which went up again last month, is also hurting our school boards.
I've even heard from school divisions that are really struggling with that carbon tax increase because they have large buildings as schools and they have large fleets of buses that are feeling that hit. And it's very, very punitive to them. And that's why we can, as a government, as a United Conservative government, continue to stand up against the NDP Liberal Alliance in Ottawa, because it's pushing these increases. Schools can't shut down, buses can't stop operating, and we want them to see the reality of living in a northern climate and find a better way to achieve some of these goals and having a greener economy.
UCP Lethbridge East candidate Nathan Neudorf will also explain how his party is bringing yet more doctors here to southwestern Alberta. He'll have details coming up after business news. Well, the summer-like conditions continued for our region as we saw over 20 degrees yet again today. Jeanette Roche is in now with an early look at the forecast. Jeanette, we're considerably higher for our average time for this time of year, which is what, 16 degrees?
Yeah, that's right. The average high for this time of year is 16.3 degrees, and we're experiencing temperatures at least 10 degrees warmer than that and even beyond. Our daytime high was 29. Even our overnight low, look at that, 8 degrees. So the average low for this time of year is 2 degrees. So we're doing pretty well there. Into tomorrow, Thursday, there we go again, a high of 29 degrees. Now we are expecting a slight chance of showers. We could see that risk of an afternoon thunderstorm as well. And look at tomorrow's overnight low, 12 degrees. I'd say it's about time to bring the flowers and plants out on the deck and leave them there. I'll be back later in the show to give you that 7-day forecast. Hal?
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. 2 Lethbridge men are facing drug trafficking charges following a huge drug bust involving Alert and LPS. Police say on April 25th, they executed a search warrant on a home in the Glendale neighborhood and seized a slew of drugs, including 131 grams of methamphetamine, 52 grams of cocaine, 350 grams of magic mushrooms, fentanyl, and just over $1,200 in cash. The drugs had a street value of around $20,000. 29-year-old James Gladden and 29-year-old Adam Seabach of Lethbridge face a wide range of charges, including drug trafficking and unauthorized possession of a weapon. Both were released on bail and await their court dates. The carnival rides and tasty snacks are just around the corner for Lethbridge, as Whoop Up Days will be back August 22nd through the 26th. The Lethbridge and District Pro Rodeo will be in fine form as well, with more than $80,000 up for grabs for competitors. The Midway will feature an estimated 30 to 40 rides, and there will be additional festivities like the Super Dogs, food trucks, and lots of live music. Mike Warkentin, the CEO of the Lethbridge and District Exhibition, says the Powwow and Princess Pageant will also be making a triumphant return, with more than $60,000 in prize money up for grabs for the best dancers.
From a public-facing perspective, the most exciting element of it is when you can see and experience and hear and in some cases taste those cultural elements. And the powwow is truly a visceral experience for everyone involved in it. And the color, the song, the dancing, everything about it is just excitement. And so as soon as the drums start, it grabs you emotionally and physically in some ways, and actually brings you into the room. But it's an incredibly exciting element that was missing from our Whoop Up Days programming, and we're very excited to have them back.
Warkentin added that admission is free for the event, and there will be an update in the coming weeks about which artists will be performing at Whoop Up Days. It should be a fun time. Runners in Lethbridge are set for one of the biggest challenges of their careers as they put their best foot forward for the first ever Old Man Backyard Ultra Running event on May 6th at Pavan Park. The initiative is hosted by Youth One. Staff from the group highlighted how the run will work.
With this event, it's unique in part that every runner runs a 6.7 kilometer loop, and they have to finish it within an hour. And then they start all over again the next hour. So they would start at 7 a.m., and then they run again at 8 a.m., and then 9 a.m., and so on. Up until there's only one runner remaining. We thought this is a great opportunity to tie it into it being a fundraiser as well, where racers can collect pledges per loop that they do.
Every $1,200 raised will sponsor one youth for a full year of free access to their programs, meals, and support services at Youth One. The group's hopes that they are able to raise around $25,000 in total from the event. Now, if running isn't your thing, then maybe try walking. Jane's Walk is a global movement of free, citizen-led walking conversations. The festival, which takes place the first weekend in May, encourages people to share stories about their neighborhoods and discover unseen aspects of their communities. Community planner with the city, Genesis Havia Oreo, shares the details about this weekend's festivities.
In Lethbridge, we have 5 walks scheduled. One is on Friday for public art, and then we also have 2 neighborhood walks in London Road, and then we have a tour of the Waste and Recycling Center where people get to experience what happens after the city picks up our waste, recycling, and now compost. And then now we also have a Jane's Ride, which is a bit different. We're not walking, we're riding our bikes to explore different environmental conscious projects in the city.
Organizers say the event is named after Jane Jacobs, who was a writer, urbanist, and activist who championed a community-based approach to city building. Mike Mountain Horse was an Indigenous man and a Lethbridge resident who fought in the First World War for Canada, and now his life will be explored in a special talk and play. Tom Sindlinger spent over 20 years getting to know Mountain Horse. He said he wanted to put on the event to let people know about the long and storied life of the veteran, including a harrowing tale of survival during World War I.
He was overseas in the First World War. He was wounded 3 different times. One time he was buried for 4 days before he was recovered. The story he liked to tell me about all the time was that while he's buried, the enemy would sit on him and eat their lunch before he was rediscovered by his comrades.
By the way, Mountain Horse is also the namesake for the Mike Mountain Horse Elementary School here in Lethbridge. Sindlinger will be performing in Lethbridge at the Yates Theatre on May 10th, 12th, and the 22nd. You know, growing up on a reserve was not easy. That's according to political analyst Melissa Embarkey, who's Métis and lived on a reserve. Embarkey says between empty promises from the federal government and boil water advisories, there were still are some serious struggles. She shared the details with Jeremy Prest from Return to Reason on Miracle Channel.
I grew up on a reserve. I left when I was 17. I pursued a higher education because I wanted to bring things back to my community that could help us. I grew up under a water advisory. We went years without water. And even today, the services that we receive are lacking compared to Canadians. And, we still have cisterns. We have our water trucked to us. That's 2023 in most Indigenous communities. So I'm very passionate about bringing Indigenous issues to the forefront.
Make sure you catch the full interview with political analyst Melissa Embarkey and Jeremy Prest from Return to Reason on the RTR YouTube page, or be sure to check out their website. Wildfires burning west of Edmonton continue to threaten many people. Hundreds have already evacuated their homes in parts of Parkland and Yellowhead counties as tinder-dry conditions and powerful winds are driving the wildfires. A reception area has been set up for evacuees at the Edson and District Leisure Centre. Wildwood residents are being told to register there. Now, earlier this week, the hamlets of Entwistle and Evansburg, 100 kilometers west of Edmonton, remained under evacuation as separate fires are being fueled by high winds and low humidity there. Meanwhile, in British Columbia, 2 highways have been closed in the interior as flooding has overtaken parts of Cache Creek. The Okanagan Indian Band expanded their evacuation orders, which included 5 properties. Local residents say the rising waters from the creek has caused a lot of havoc. Residents are advised to stay at least 10 feet back from the banks of the creek and the local river. According to Drive BC, both Highway 97 and Highway 1 are closed in the village due to flooding in the region. The Saskatchewan government says a new mobile app means people will be able to access their health records on their cell phones. The My Sask Health Record app will allow users to see lab test results, medical imaging reports, prescription history, and past doctor visits. The province says the information will be stored securely. Officials say a number of patients want to play a role in guiding their own health, and the new app will make that much easier. Starting next week, hospitals in Manitoba will begin collecting self-declared race-based data for patients. Shared Health and other groups will start collecting the information as part of an initiative being led by an Indigenous health services group at the University of Manitoba. The Executive Director of Indigenous Affairs, Dr. Marcia Anderson, says collecting racial, ethnic, and Indigenous identifiers means the system can look at ways to help improve the healthcare system which serves racialized communities. A new report says Russia is weaponizing religion in its conflict with Ukraine. The study from the Institute for the Study of War says Russia is persecuting churches in occupied areas. We have more now on this report from Andrew Boyd with Release International.
The report says Russian forces have closed or taken over 76 places of worship, looted or destroyed 13, and have killed or seized 29 religious leaders in occupied Ukraine. Russia, it says, continues to weaponize religion. According to the report, Russian soldiers are harassing Baptists, calling them American spies and enemies of the Russian Orthodox people. It's alleged one Russian officer told Christians in Ukraine, evangelical believers like you should be completely destroyed. You need to be buried alive. The new report confirms what Release International is hearing from its partners in Ukraine. The pastors are being targeted and churches closed in areas under Russian occupation. In 2016, President Putin required all religious organizations and churches in Russia to register with the government. It effectively outlawed foreign missionary work and has led to the persecution of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church in the occupied territories, along with Baptists and other Protestant denominations. This counter-terrorism measure has been used to prosecute American Baptist and Pentecostal missionaries and to burn Bibles. In Russia itself, there are signs that the state is clamping down on religious protests against the war. On March the 30th, a Moscow court jailed a 63-year-old Orthodox Christian for 7 years for condemning Russia's war on social media. Mikhail Simonov posted, "We, Russia, have become godless. Forgive us, Lord." Human rights organization Forum 18 says Simonov is the first person to be jailed for expressing his religious opposition to the war. Others are also now standing trial. Musician Anna Shigino was arrested for displaying the Bible verse, "Blessed are the peacemakers," during an anti-war protest in March 2022. This is Andrew Boyd for the Global News Alliance.
Keep praying for persecuted Christians everywhere. Wow. Well, we saw a temperature of over 20 degrees in Lethbridge once again, and it appears as though the warm temperatures may be sticking around. Full weather details are on deck. Well, we enjoyed some beautiful temperatures across much of southwestern Alberta again today. Jeanette Rocher is now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, are we getting close to breaking any records here in Lethbridge?
Yeah, you know, we are very close there, Hal, with a record high of 27.5 degrees, which was recorded back in 1998. I'd say that we were pretty much there. Last I looked, it was 27 was our high today, even though we were looking at that expected high of 29. We are expecting that high of 29 again tomorrow on Thursday, looking at a slight chance of showers and then a risk of a late afternoon thunderstorm. A 25 for a high on Friday, lots of sunshine, but Saturday, that seems to be the cool one for the week there. 15 is the high there. Looking at shower activity as well. Lots of sunshine expected on Sunday with a high of 19 degrees, 20 degrees on Monday with a mix of sun and cloud. And then rounding out that 7-day forecast, we're looking at Tuesday, rain and a high of 17 degrees, which will put us back kind of into that more seasonable place where we were talking about earlier. The average high for this time of year, 16, average low, 2 degrees, 28. That was our high temperature on this day back in 1998. And back in 1956, we were sitting at a chilly -8, very cold for this time of year. That was a record-breaking cold. 6:05, that was when the sun rose this morning, sunset this evening at 8:52 p.m., giving us exactly 14 hours and 47 minutes of daylight. We're looking at just under 15 hours now. Okay, Victoria, not a bad one at all. 16 for a high, mix of sun and cloud. Sunshine in Vancouver, going to get a bit cloudy by the afternoon, 19 for a high there. 30 degrees expected tomorrow again in Edmonton. Edmonton also under a heat warning. Also looking at an overnight low of 14 degrees, so not really cooling down too much. That won't be expected until the weekend will be when they are cooling down a bit more. 28 for a high tomorrow in Calgary, looking at a risk of a afternoon thunderstorm and some drizzle throughout the day as well. High of 26 in Saskatoon, lots of sunshine. Beautiful day also in Regina expected. Clear skies and 24 and a high of 19 degrees tomorrow in Winnipeg. Also sunshiny, so beautiful across the prairies. Not so much in central Canada. We're looking more in those teen temperatures and shower activity. 40% chance of showers expected in Toronto with a high of 13 degrees. Same thing for Ottawa. 40% chance of showers, 13 for a high, 10 degrees expected in Montreal, and looking at a 30% chance of showers. Even more shower activity expected in Fredericton tomorrow with a 60% chance, high of 10 degrees, high of only 9 expected in Halifax. Halifax also looking at 2 millimeters of rain and up to 40 winds. Only 7 for a high in Charlottetown tomorrow with mixed drizzle and showers throughout the day. 3 degrees the high in St. John's, Newfoundland, looking at 2 to 4 millimeters of rain there and up to 50 winds. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
Bell says it will soon offer free messaging for all Aeroplan members on Air Canada flights. The company's announced that as of May 15th, Bell will sponsor in-flight Wi-Fi services across the airline's fleet, including Air Canada Express and Air Canada Rouge. The partnership will allow for passengers to send and receive messages on a number of apps with any capable device, regardless of their mobile carrier. The deal also means additional benefits for Aeroplan customers, including the offer of new promotional rewards and the expansion of Air Canada's live TV service on flights to the United States later this year. You know, it appears as though those grocery chains are still raking in large profits. Loblaw Companies says it is raising its dividend by 10%. The company reported $418 million in quarterly profits and says it will now pay a quarterly dividend of 44.6 cents per share, which is up from 40.5 cents. Revenue for the parent company of Loblaws and Shoppers Drug Mart was close to $13 billion. That is up from almost $12.3 billion a year earlier. Sales at food retail same stores were up 3.1%, while drug retail same store sales rose by 7.4%. Canadian Tire Corporation says it is acquiring 10 former Bed Bath & Beyond leases to expand its Marks and Pro Hockey Life banners. The Toronto-based retailer says the leases will add up to $1.6 million. 6 of the leases will be for relocations of clothing in Alberta, British Columbia, and Ontario, while the other 4 will be new Pro Hockey Life stores in Ontario. Bed Bath & Beyond's Canadian arm was granted an initial order for creditor protection back in February as its U.S. parent company struggled to stay afloat and then filed for bankruptcy protection itself just over 2 months later. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 52 points on the day to finish at 20,354. The Dow was down 270 points to 33,414. The S&P 500 was down 28 on the day to 4,090, and the Nasdaq was down 55 points to 12,025. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down 306 to 68.60 U.S. per barrel. Natural gas was down 4 cents to 2.17 U.S. Gold was down 4 cents to $2,038.92 U.S. an ounce, and silver was even on the day at $25.58 U.S. an ounce. Feed wheat is at $11.05 per bushel, barley's at $8.93, canola's at $16.25, and corn is at $10.11 per bushel. Live cattle were down $1.25 to $161.65. That's for the June contract. Feeder cattle were down $2.53 to $203.43, and lean hogs were down 3 cents to $78.15. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 73.46 U.S. Recapping one of our top stories, a soldier from Alberta and another from Ontario were both killed while fighting in Ukraine. Global Affairs says it was aware of reports the 2 Canadians died and is following up with authorities. Family and aid workers identified the 2 Canadians as Kyle Porter of Alberta and Cole Zelenko of Ontario. The 2 were killed during fierce fighting last week around the eastern city of Bakhmut. The Alberta election is coming up on May the 29th. Now, coming up next, we'll chat with Alberta Deputy Premier Nathan Neudorf, who is also the UCP candidate for Lethbridge East, to see where he stands on a wide range of issues as we head to the polls later this month. Listen, if you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. We'd love to hear from you.
Here's today's Bridge City News community calendar. Come and celebrate Cinco de Mayo with the whole family at the second annual Taco Festival in Lethbridge, taking place on Friday at the Multicultural Center from 12 to 7 p.m. Enjoy live entertainment with a mariachi singer, traditional Mexican dancers, plus a hot wings challenge, delicious tacos, and more. Admission is free. The Interfaith Food Bank is looking for volunteers to help in administration, warehouse, and kitchen. The commitment is 3 to 4 hours, once or twice a week. Through your help, you'll be providing food security in our community and enjoy a sense of purpose by serving others. For details on volunteering, contact Bill at volunteer@interfaithfoodbank.ca or by calling 403-320-8779. And that's today's Bridge City News community calendar.
The U.S. Navy announced it would be extending the deployment of one of its naval strike groups. Now, this follows a drone attack that killed an American contractor and injured several American troops. To talk about this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, who joins us once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, the decision to extend the deployment of the George H.W. Bush Carrier Strike Group means that 5,000 American forces won't be returning home anytime soon.
Yeah, that's not what this administration wants to do. I know they want to pride themselves on making friends around the globe, apologizing around the globe, but certainly not getting into heated conflicts or escalating any situations around the globe. And if you recall, last week when we saw these back-to-back proxy attacks by Iran's regime on U.S. assets in the region, President Biden went to the podium and said, "We do not want to escalate things, but there will be consequences." So kind of, going back and forth and speaking a bit in contradictory terms, especially if you're Iran's regime, you're not really shaking in your boots when you hear that the United States does not want to have a conflict, does not want to escalate, does not want to be involved, especially when this administration is all about that as their branding. So, of course, all our enemies are going to take advantage of that. And we see more and more of these types of proxy attacks. There have been 83 plus attacks on U.S. assets since Biden has been in office, and over 30 just since October. So, yes, they got the message that this administration is not serious about it, but perhaps this is a small step in the right direction to say that, look, we're here, we have to have a presence here because you're not letting us leave. If you want the region, you got to behave, and then we'll leave. So that's what we're seeing over in Syria.
Lisa, Air Force combat aircraft downed an unidentified aircraft that appeared to have crossed into Israeli airspace from Syria on Sunday. The incident came amid escalating tensions between Israel and Iran related to Iran's presence on Israel's northern border.
Yeah, of course, this is another proxy. It's really Iran's regime operating out of Syria, using that as their launch pad to regional affairs, to have access to the big Satan, which is the United States and our assets there, and the little Satan, which is Israel. These are the two sworn enemies of Iran's regime. And of course, being in Syria and having a presence all throughout the Middle East, Iran's regime has access to its two enemies and is able to really take little steps to test the waters. And in this case, a drone going into Israel, definitely testing the waters to see how far they can get, what they can get away with, how quickly Israeli intelligence, in this case, very quickly, would be able to capture them and to notice them. And again, testing us all around the world. It's interesting how far Iran's regime has been able to carry out this desire to spread its influence. They were the original Islamic State. When we talk about ISIS being the Islamic State, that's a Sunni version of Islam. The original Islamic State came into power 44 years ago with the toppling of the Shah in Iran, and this regime that came into power wanted to spread its brand of political Islam all throughout the world, and they're doing a pretty good job of it. How? Look, they are in Syria, they're in Iraq, they're in Lebanon, they're in Yemen, they're in Gaza and the West Bank, and of course they're at our southern border. They are in Venezuela and Bolivia and Brazil and all throughout Latin America. So when the Biden administration speaks about this, of getting back into the nuclear deal, of shaking hands with these people, they have a very different agenda than shaking hands and signing nuclear deals. They definitely want to spread their influence, and they want to let us know here in the United States, they want to let us know that they're at our footstep, that they have access to us, whether it's in Syria or Venezuela or anywhere else, that they can reach us if they want to.
A U.S. citizen who moved his family to Syria to join the Islamic State terrorist group has been sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. 55-year-old Emran Ali, who was born in Trinidad and Tobago, pleaded guilty last November, Lisa, to conspiring to provide material support to a foreign terrorist group.
Yes, he moved his family from country to country until they ended up in Syria. He had lied to his family and his friends, according to the court reports, that they are going on a vacation. All along, his plan was to join ISIS, to fight alongside ISIS. And when he got there, he got his training. He was fighting alongside ISIS. Then they moved him to the construction ward. Then they moved him to some other different parts of ISIS. And he had buyer's remorse, as we often see when Western fighters go over to ISIS and try to be a part of that empire. And he tried to come back. And of course, now, we don't hear about ISIS as much as we used to, but we're hearing a lot about these cases when Western citizens are being tried in the United States. In this case, he's in Florida. Facing the consequences of their decisions.
Lisa, OPEC surprised some analysts by saying that more output cuts are coming in around 1.1 million barrels per day. Now, when combined with previous cuts and with an increase of a carbon tax here in Canada, the price of fuel is going to be going up and up yet again.
Yet again, and just in time for the summer months when families want to hop in the car and take their trips and their vacations. This is not good news for the West. This is, no matter how you spin it, no matter how many times they tell us we're not facing inflation, we're not facing all these different economic consequences to what's going on around the world, here you have it again. So yes, 1.16 barrels cut once again. This is a decision made by the OPEC states. Saudi Arabia obviously having the biggest portion of that cut, more than 500,000 barrels cut from them again. And again, a decision to say we control what goes on in terms of oil output. It's not going to be President Biden. It's not going to be Russia. It's not going to be Iran. It's going to be us. And really flexing their power to say, this is what we have over the world. But again, who are the victims of all of this? Canadian, American families, honest working middle class families who just want to go to the pump and not be, totally ripped off and not have to make that decision and to really rethink their decisions just because of the price of gas, whether or not to take that next family vacation.
Yeah, like you said, with summer just around the corner, this is going to hurt families quite a bit. Lisa, government officials in North Korea say they're looking at sending weapons and munitions to Russia in exchange for food. The food shortage is apparently becoming a real issue for the Asian nation, and Russia needs more military help in its war with Ukraine.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, you're looking around the world and you're seeing that all of these rogue states that have been isolated by the West are now finding each other and being able to help each other out. So in the case of North Korea, we know that they've already sold weapons parts to Russia. Now there's going to be an exchange to get them food. Of course, if there's sanctions on North Korea, if they're not able to get it from anywhere else, well, there's always Russia. You have them trading with Iran's regime. You have them trading with China. They will find each other, and that's because their main goal is to evade the sanctions, to evade the isolation, and to try to move forward with each other. And this is exactly how they've done so. Look, we have in the West have to rethink the punitive measures against Russia. I'm not saying to not punish Russia, but I'm saying we have to think about punishments that will actually work in the short term to stop the war in Ukraine, instead of fueling Ukraine, pouring all that money into Ukraine, and then having to pay for it again by watching Russia grow bigger and bigger and stronger by teaming up with our enemies. So we're kind of losing both sides here. We're putting all this money into Ukraine. They're not able to make anything out of this war. And on the other end, you're watching Russia become more and more aggressive towards the United States and the West, and obviously finding other ways to gain power, to trade, to get its weapons, and to move forward. So it's almost coming out as a zero sum, and we're becoming more and more irrelevant on the world stage, watching our enemies join each other and really move on together.
2 women were attacked by a man for not wearing their hijabs in Iran. Lisa, the man apparently poured yogurt on the mother and daughter at a market near the city of Shandiz. Now, an arrest warrant for the man, along with the women, has been issued. And Iran's president emphasized once again that the hijab is mandatory under the law.
Yeah, I guess this man found it very triggering to watch a mother and daughter at the local corner supermarket trying to get some goods. while they weren't covering their hair. And so they got into a verbal altercation, which turned into the man then taking a bucket of yogurt and dumping it on their heads. And this video apparently went viral, especially in Iran. Look, these videos give women more and more courage and more power and more ammunition to move forward and not wear their hijabs and try to go into public places. If you remember, we covered at the Foreign Desk a few months ago that banks announced that they wouldn't serve women who weren't wearing their hijabs, or they wouldn't be able to work there if they weren't wearing hijabs. So different sectors are trying to crack down on to join the government in trying to enforce mandatory headscarves for women. And here you have two brave mother-daughter duo just going to the market without their hijabs, but apparently a local citizen took matters into his own hands. And again, they said that his arrest warrant is out also for disturbing the peace, and them obviously for not wearing their hijabs. So a lot of these stories coming out of Iran, the people are still finding ways of showing their disenchantment. In this case, a mother and daughter really becoming, they become symbols of this movement when they become brave enough to go out in public without their headscarves. So we cover their stories to tell of their bravery.
Yeah. Definitely. A radio station run by women in Afghanistan's northeast region has been shut down for playing music during the holy month of Ramadan. Now, the Taliban allegedly shut the station down, which started about 10 years ago.
Yeah, Hal, remember when they promised us that this Taliban would be different from the Taliban of the 90s? Well, they're turning out to be much worse. This is horrific. I mean, think about all the people who worked with this radio station, whose lives depend on it, who are able to communicate with the masses through these different media platforms, and they get shut down because they're playing music during this solemn month. Look, this is obviously a takeover of religious extremism, punishing people just like in Iran for not wearing their hijab, here for playing music during the month of Ramadan. But of course, that country going backwards, I mean, Afghanistan, since the U.S. withdrawal, and going in a horrific direction where people are really being repressed in many ways, women not being able to go to school, women not being able to go to their doctor's appointments alone, having to have a male chaperone, in this case, playing music. I mean, media is obviously shut down, journalists are arrested and rounded up. So here's more of that. All they ask for is their basic freedoms.
Bringing things a little closer to home, what are your thoughts on the indictment charges against former U.S. President Donald Trump?
Oh, how much time do we have? Look, I've said this to many audiences, whether you're left, right, or center, disrespecting rule of law in any country is not a good thing. This might be your guy, and you might be in front of Trump Towers in New York City, rooting this on because you're so happy that the politician you didn't like is going through this. But, next time around when the Republicans are in charge, they might do this again because it will become precedent. And that's exactly what's happening. I think there's been such a knee-jerk reaction in our country here to Donald Trump, not looking at the fact that he is our president, or former president in this case, but even while he was president, you would have, lawmakers on the other side defending China over our president, defending ISIS over our president, and defending Iran's regime over our president. This sets a precedent. It does. It sets a precedent, and our enemies are looking and they're rejoicing at the fact that we are so consumed by this one man and this one individual. And what ends up happening is that those who support him become even more zealous about the cause. And those who are maybe on the fence about him look at this and become more supportive of him because of the, again, knee-jerk reaction by the other side. So, let's treat everybody equally. Let's not, if you saw a lot of what was going on social media, Nancy Pelosi coming out and saying if he's innocent, he can go to court and prove his innocence. Well, that's not how it works in this country. You're innocent until proven guilty and not the other way around. And that's how he's being treated in this case, the other way around, guilty until proven innocent. So it's very unfortunate that this is what is being shown of our country. This is very unfortunate with all the crises that are going on around the world, and how you and I just talked about so many of them and their priority and what it means to us here living in the West, in Canada and the United States. So to really distract people with this nonsense, with this circus of a case, it is not a good look, regardless of whether you support Donald Trump or not.
So how much of a hit do you think this will be for the Republican Party? I mean, the election's coming up next year.
Right. It depends on how they handle it. I said this in the last election, and I think it's relevant again. It's theirs to lose. And if they go after each other, then the Democrats can just sit back and claim another victory. But if the Republicans play this correctly, meaning if they go after the right issues, we're talking about families, we're talking about school curriculum, we're talking about health, we're talking about transparency, we're talking about going after the WHO and the CDC and going after schools that are being very, just aggressive towards parents, focusing on the economy first and foremost, focusing on gas prices, on egg prices, on milk prices, things that really pertain to average Americans, and then going hard on a lot of the national security issues that matter, our northern border, our southern border, the fact that China is a huge threat and will continue to be a huge threat. And really walking away from a lot of this nonsense. I think the average American, regardless of political party, is tired of the nonsense, is tired of the lies, regardless of whether it's in schools, it's about COVID, it's about the economy. We're just being lied to left, right, and center. And I think that a lot of people are tired of that. They just want a hardworking, good ethics, president to come into office and to take this country into the right direction. And I don't know who that president is. I don't know who that candidate might be, but I think all Americans would appreciate something like that going forward.
She's our foreign affairs expert and political reporter. She's also host of the Foreign Desk. Lisa Daftari, thanks so much for joining us today from Los Angeles.
My pleasure.
When we think about southern Alberta, most of us think agriculture, so you might not expect to find a diverse cultural scene here, but in fact, many arts events, from gallery exhibitions to festivals to concerts to theater performances and even dance recitals, are thriving in the area, thanks in part to the efforts of the Allied Arts Council. But what exactly is the Arts Council and what does it do? Well, we're going to find out. I'm joined today by Executive Director Suzanne Lint. Suzanne, welcome to Bridge City News. Great to have you on today.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, Suzanne, the arts have a strong influence across the silos and segments of any community. So can you maybe share with us some of the highlights that the Allied Arts Council has brought to the community of Lethbridge?
Yeah, so the Allied Arts Council has been in the city of Lethbridge since 1958. So it was established a long time ago by a group of arts enthusiasts, people who were really interested in ensuring that there was always a vibrant arts ecosystem in the community. They came out of a really strong historical background in the arts. Just to throw out an example is the Playgoers of Lethbridge, one of the oldest amateur theatre companies in Canada, original member of the Allied Arts Council, are celebrating the 100th anniversary this year. So there is a really rich history of arts in our community going back to when we weren't a community, right, at the turn of the 19th century. The Allied Arts Council was established by these folks who really wanted to ensure that the community had opportunity for arts experiences. They were very interested in seeing some funds that have been bequested by the Yates family go to the building of an art auditorium, a performing arts auditorium. So that was one of their impetuses, but just a real dedication to having a strong, supported arts community here in Lethbridge. Over the years, I think we've stayed really true to that mission. Our mission is still to advance and enhance the arts in Lethbridge, to provide leadership for that. So everything we do is about making Lethbridge a better place because the artists and arts organizations are supported.
Sounds like it. So what are some of the highlights maybe over the years?
Oh, many, many highlights and many, many sort of moments in history, going back to when the Yates Memorial, they were successful in having that facility built. The council advocated and were able to enter the Bowman Arts Center, which was owned by the city in the mid-60s, and took on and created a home for arts activities in the community back in the mid-60s. That facility served the community very well until the mid-2000s. Early in 2000, the council sort of reinvented itself, and by 2005-ish, we were living on 7th Street in a storefront. We had disassociated a little bit from the Bowman and broadened our community support activities. But we also were working very hard on projects to establish and ensure that the arts were well ingrained in the community. So the board launched an arts rebuilding campaign back in early 2000, which the result is some work done to the SAG improvements, the establishment of a public art program in Lethbridge, and you began to see public artwork being built in various areas or installed in various areas, and also the building of Casa, which is like a huge hub and creative center for the arts, not only in Lethbridge, but really for the region, the entire region.
Yeah, definitely. I think anybody who lives in the area is very familiar with the Casa, with Yates Theatre. I know I love the Yates, and then of course SAG, the Southern Alberta Arts Gallery, so for sure. And Suzanne, we seem to live in polarizing times, so maybe can you talk about how the arts can be used to bring people together?
Yeah, I think that, we all enjoy the arts more than we know. I always say that we all have some creativity. We all pick the color of the paint on our walls, and we all sing in the shower and movement. You see little kids as soon as they can stand bouncing rhythmically to music. I think creativity is intrinsic in human beings. So whether we identify that creativity with sort of the traditional fine arts, it is really all-encompassing. And I think they are a bridge. They're a bridge between people, because all cultures experience art. They're just so intrinsic to who we are. And unfortunately, I think a lot of times we don't recognize their value and the power they have on us. And the power they have to do good things in community.
Yeah, so true. Exactly. You mentioned, of course, the Casa Building, and that was built about 10 years ago. In fact, I think it's coming up on its 10-year anniversary.
Big anniversary.
This spring, I believe, in May. So it's become a landmark, as you mentioned, in Lethbridge's downtown core. So maybe can you share with us how this building continues to benefit the residents of the city? Some people might not know, really.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing because lots of people say, oh, nobody goes there, which is really not true. And it's a much envied building. When we have visitors who come into the building from away, they sort of go, wow, how did this happen? Because it is really a purpose-built facility for arts creation, for people of all ages, interests, and abilities, which is a pretty unique thing. So there are all disciplines in the building. It isn't a performing arts center. It is really about that grassroots creation of artwork or learning experiences. There's certainly opportunities for audiences to come in to experience the arts, but it is a place to create art. And it is very unique. It's affordable. It's open, it's welcoming, and really it has visual arts, it has a dance studio, it has a strong music program that's delivered by the University of Lethbridge Conservatory. There's a black box theater for workshopping work. There is a gallery, exhibition spaces where local regional artists can share their work with the larger community. So it is really quite an astounding building. It is extremely busy, and it is coming up on May 13th. We'll be hosting the 10-year celebration of Casa. We're really excited to open the building. It'll be open that day for free workshops, tours, probably a little bit of cake to celebrate, and then wrapping up in the evening with hopefully an outdoor concert, if weather permitting, otherwise indoor concert with Oscar Lopez, who was the inaugural concert performer at Casa back in 2013. So we're really delighted with the lineup of events that people are going to be able to come in. And it is really an open and welcoming place, like I say. say, for people of all ages, all abilities to come and try art, or just to come and look at art and experience it.
Sounds like there's going to be a lot going on for sure. So for new residents of Lethbridge, can you maybe describe what's available to them at Casa?
Yeah, so I think there are multiple things. There's certainly structured classes. So if you're interested in doing art training at sort of in any discipline, like I said, the conservatory offers music. There's clay classes. The Weaving Guild offers weaving classes, textiles, painting, drawing. There's really a strong program of classes available. There is a main gallery exhibition space that has art exhibitions that rotate on about 8-week cycle, plus many spaces within the building. There are meeting rooms that if you need to have a meeting, you're able to rent. The community room, Friday recitals, all kinds of recitals and programs that are put on by the various arts organizations and groups within the community happening all the time. So there is a lot, either as like I say, a participant, or as an audience member. Check the website for those opportunities. There's a lot. We also, I think, offer a number of programs that are more targeted and specific that we are very proud of. We have an AMAPA program, which is a program that's offered for ability. It's an arts ability program for the community that was started in the Bowman many years ago, that supports people who are experiencing various challenges to come in and do art within the facility. We run a program called RAW that also came over from Bowman days, which is for people who are facing life challenges, maybe perhaps transitioning into new housing or out of homelessness. So a free access program for those folks. An artist residency program for artists who are developing their careers to come into the building and be able to create work in our studios, our art studios, free of charge to develop projects, and in exchange give back workshops or talks, community access programming. So there's a lot that goes on in that building.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like it. You would never know that. So, with spring is here now, so with April and summer quickly approaching, what events can people look forward to this spring and summer? And I believe you have a Making It Big in Lethbridge theme for this summer as well.
So one of the gallery projects that happens is called the Summer Salon. So it's a different theme every year. We've established, the curator, Darcy Logan, established that program a number of years ago. So the salon is really an uncurated opportunity for artists to submit around a theme, and as many of the works as we can possibly exhibit go up. And so this summer, the theme is Making It Big, and making it big means things that are different to different artists. So there are artists who work large, typically, so we're pushing them to work bigger. But for someone who's used to painting, a 4x6, or a photographer who does 4x6, pushing them to move beyond the normal parameters of their arts practice and try creating a little larger, a little bigger than they normally would. So that's a really exciting initiative. The other successful program that we're running for, I believe, the third season is our Upside Downtown concert series. The series started during COVID, as we were coming out of COVID, as an outdoor concert to give opportunity to the community, free concerts with local musicians. Thursday night, it's sort of an after work opportunity, 5 to 7, come to the plaza at Rotary Square and enjoy some free music. Great initiative that's been growing. Our audiences have been growing. And this year, we're just in the process of completing a large program grant that we received to do shade sales. So it's going to be a little shaded and a little cooler, hopefully. A big project that was supported by Prairie's Can and the Community Foundation that we're really pleased to sort of activate that Rotary Square. So that will be going on through the months of July and August, and then going into September, the Alberta Month of the Artist and Arts Days and all of those wonderful things, which are really activities that we coordinate out of our 7th Street Arts Leadership Office as the Allied Arts Council.
Wow. Well, I know that the AAC also includes developing local artist talent, and we're almost out of time, but really quickly, I understand that there are some scholarships and awards that are available, and maybe talk about what they are and how can people nominate an artist in their life for an award or a scholarship?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. We're coming into that award season. So I think we're like 15 years ago, we established the Mayor's Luncheon for Business in the Arts, which is an opportunity to acknowledge how important it is that business supports, the civic government supports, and the arts community supports and work together to create that strong ecosystem. And as part of that event, which is held in September, we do award to artists, and the nominations close, I believe, at the end of May. There's information on our website under the artist opportunities. There's a link called Awards and Scholarships, but we award to individuals, businesses, and organizations that philanthropically contribute either through volunteerism or through funding to the arts. Those are general community members that make the arts a great thing in our community, support the artists and the arts organization. We also have awards for young and emerging artists, which are scholarship based to help them on their way, and a very important peer recognition award, the Joan Waterfield Memorial Award, which is about those artists and in our community and arts administrators and the arts builders, one of whom was Joan Waterfield, huge in the theater world, who contribute and ensure that Lethbridge really continues to be the dynamic arts center that it really is. The sort of unknown secret. We are a thriving, strong arts community.
Absolutely, we are. No question. Absolutely. We're out of time, but Suzanne, thanks so much for your time today. It was great to chat with you about the Allied Arts Council.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. That was Allied Arts Council's Executive Director, Suzanne Lind. I'm Jeanette Roche. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks so much for joining us.